welcome to Hypothetically Intentional, where we ask the question, what if we set intentions with everything we do? I'm your co-host Andrew, returning from the dead.
No, welcome back, Andrew. I'm your co-host Michelle, and I'm happy to have you back.
Yes.
It's good to have you in the room again.
The other side was pretty chill, but I'm glad to be back.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I hear you. I get it.
I'm not a zombie at heart. I'm a human at heart.
Well, that's good to know. You have a heart, and it's human.
And it's human. Brains do taste pretty good, though.
Oh, dear.
So today, it's my turn to set the intention, because
you've been gone for a while.
For so long. So
much pressure on me when you were gone.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know Healthy Boundaries guy was not very into setting intentions.
Super not into setting intentions.
But I can handle that for now, at least.
All right, let's hear it.
So I think our intention today should be to do our best to see things as they are, both the positive and the negative.
Ooh.
So,
clarity. I like it.
So what are we going to talk about today, Mom?
So today on our new social media channels, we asked, we didn't do this part today, but on our new social media channels, we asked people to write in with any questions they have. And we had asked specifically about healthy boundaries. But it's funny because this question is about a healthy boundary, but I actually asked you if we could do this one together instead of with Healthy Boundaries Guy. And you'll understand why in a minute.
Okay.
So the question is about, and I'm not going to read it, it's, detailed, but the question is about when we set healthy boundaries and then they start going well, that process of maintaining them and feeling comfortable within that, this person is talking about, they know that breaking the old pattern is healthy, but there's this gained space and a loss of like a pressure that comes in when you're trying to figure out how to set the boundary, or even before you set the boundary, that is suddenly gone. And now it feels uncomfortable. And they are saying how, there's maybe a sense of loss and maybe even some anxiety. And what they want to do is celebrate the win, but they have this discomfort that makes that challenging. And so I read this question verbatim to Healthy Boundaries Guy, and his response was, enjoy it. And I was like, oh, you're too far removed. You're too far gone. You're too far into your healthy boundaries to be able to relate to a question like this. Because I'm like, oh, I totally get that. I totally understand that feeling and what that might be like and where it might be coming from. And I can give some suggestions as to how you might navigate it. Do you have any feedback or thoughts you want to share about it?
I think I'm on kind of the opposite end of the spectrum as Healthy Boundaries Guy, where if you're somewhere in the middle and Healthy Boundaries Guy has done this a lot and is super comfortable with it, I don't think I have really a lot of experience that I can bring to this problem, because it sounds like the sort of boundaries that are being set here are, someone, the question asker was in a situation where someone was being maybe abusive, or maybe at least definitely asking too much of this person, or something like that, where they're really being sort of infringed upon by someone else, and then this person set that boundary but still has this person in their life, and I don't think that's something that I've really gone through, at least not in my memory. Like I don't think I'm lucky enough not to have people in my life who I feel like have been, who I felt the need to set this kind of boundary with.
You're saying you don't have that?
I'm saying
you haven't yet?
I'm saying I haven't yet.
Okay.
I think the one example would be an ex, would be one person who has, who definitely needed a boundary set, several, but that was at a point where just cutting all ties was the best option for me, and so that's what
Got it.
I did. So I don't think I've had a situation where I have had someone who was like really, really stepping on me, and I set a boundary, but then still had them in my life after the fact. So I will be coming at this with sort of fresh eyes. So
okay, cool. That's good. I think that's good. Yeah. So what I'm hearing in all of that you just said is that you don't show up in this world as a doormat. I definitely I showed up in this world as a doormat for a very long time. In that I just didn't have a lot of boundaries. I said yes to a lot of things that just were to my detriment at the expense of myself. And that's tricky. And then so this particular question, as you said, is about someone who's realized they needed to set boundaries, wanted to set boundaries is maybe a better way of putting it, and also still wants, this person or these people in their life. So that's a very different thing than, like salting a field and just not, like having the boundary be a salted field where you just don't visit that thing anymore. Great examples are like some people I'm sorry, I'm not having a political conversation with you. That's a terrible idea. It's not going to go anywhere. Let's just salt that field and walk away from that part of it. But the rest of the relationship can still exist. And, I don't have to call you an asshole and you don't have to call me an asshole. Or maybe we do, but it's okay because we're just not going to talk about that thing.
Right.
So if the experience up until now has been there's these challenges that were not working to the point where it was either time to walk away completely or figure out a healthy boundary where they could stay in their life, then it starts working. There's like this unsettledness of like, whoa, holy shit, that worked. And now when it's dysfunctional and it's consistent, you know what to expect. You understand what's coming. When you walk through that door or sit at that table, there's not much that's going to surprise you when it's an ongoing boundary or ongoing lack of a boundary, and it just is what it is, and that. It's familiar. The discomfort is comfortable because it's known. Then when you set the boundary and everything changes, then there's like this unknown. It feels a little bit like an unstable environment because you don't know what's coming. And you could go several different ways with that, right? Like you might just be waiting for the other shoe to drop. You might be just terrified because you don't know. Honestly, too, like suddenly if it starts feeling good and kind, you might feel like unworthy because it's not something that you've ever received before. And so there's a lot of different, like some of it is just I would have more questions, right? But the pressure that goes away, I'm just thinking about it as like how some people have a really hard time in silence and they'll fill that space with any kind of noise.
Yes.
It feels similar to that. So like when you set a healthy boundary and all of a sudden there's all this space, it's like, whoa, what am I going to do with this void? There's a void here that usually brings me some sort of emotion or some sort of a thing. And now it's empty and I don't know what to do with that space.
Yeah. I really like that metaphor of space. They're like you're setting a boundary. You're pushing this fence forward, and you're salting this field. And what are you going to build there?
Yes.
Like all of a sudden you have all this land that previously had stuff going on. Maybe not good stuff, but there was stuff going on there.
Yeah.
And it being suddenly an open canvas I could totally understand how that would be. It
can feel terrifying.
Scary. Yeah.
Yeah. It can feel scary, and it's often when we're a person who doesn't set boundaries or boundaries are hard, often the people who didn't set boundaries before are also, and I'm using myself here, I'm not thinking about this person or like I don't know enough about it, necessarily to analyze or what's going on there. But like for me, I was a control freak. I controlled everything around me. My boundary was control, super unhealthy, hanging on tight, trying to control every external situation that I possibly could to keep myself as safe as possible. I'm saying that in quotes because it wasn't really safe. It was just protected in an unhealthy way, and it wasn't even protecting me for anything. But so if you're showing up in that controlled environment and you know what you're going to get and you're used to control, because usually it's not just in boundaries. Usually that's kind of as much of your life as you can possibly control. And then you step into this new arena where, oh my gosh, I have boundaries now. But what that also means is I don't have external control. I set my boundary with clarity. It's working. Now I don't know what the fuck to do.
Yeah.
Like now they're showing up accepting me. That feels weird. I'm trying to discern if it feels authentic. I think what I'm hearing as I'm speaking about this is observe. Get yourself to your safe space within yourself. Do your self-care work and make sure your energy is charged, like you're in a good, clear, balanced spot before you meet with these people as much as possible. and then come from that observer state. And just, it's also self-trust. Trust yourself that no matter what goes on or how they show up, that you can maintain that boundary, which for me was one of the hardest things, because I would fall back into my old patterns and forget how to set a healthy boundary because I was back in my old ways, right? So really, it helps me to run through possibilities in my head, which normally I'm like, don't tell yourself those old stories. They're not, but this is valid. It's a learning tool. It's like, okay, this is how it used to show up. Now they're showing up differently. When they used to show up that way, this is how I set the boundary. This is the boundary. This is my clarity. This is my neutral. This is my power, right? And then when you show up in that way, it's way more helpful than to show up in anxiety or show up in fear of them showing up. Like, trust yourself to be able to handle however they show up, and then I guess observe. I'm just like dance with the new, whatever that looks like. Be playful with it if you can, and just here's the thing: you're seeing a new version of them too. Like, you doing the work is rippling into that, because if the boundary is working, that means that something is happening for them as well. And so to hold the space and observe, how they're going to show up. I mean, that's a layered answer. That's a lot of work, right? Like, recharge yourself, make sure you're in full, like, make sure you've gotten your sleep, make sure you've taken care of yourself, make sure, that you've done whatever you need to do to ground and energetically prepare, and then show up as best you can. Mm-hmm. But it's normal to have that anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that I would add to that, just from my, sort of outside perspective, is I feel like I think it's important to fill that space, right, with something else, right? Because to me, that seems like that's where the anxiety is coming from, is you set up this boundary. Now there's this sort of empty space in the relationship. The relationship has lost something, and maybe it lost a bad thing, but it lost something. And that needs to be filled with something, because I feel like otherwise it would be easy to fall into old habits.
You talked about something that I hadn't touched on yet, but it's a really important piece of this, and that is the loss. It has shifted, it has changed, and there's a grieving process that comes with that is required. Like, allowing yourself to grieve what was, even though it was unhealthy and didn't make sense. Or maybe it made sense, but it, shouldn't have made sense on some level. Grieving that is important. And that's true of healthy boundaries. That's true of transformational work. Like, every time I lose an old pattern or shift out of an old pattern or heal a piece of myself, I grieve the old self. Because she was familiar. I knew her. I knew how she was going to show up. I knew what she had been through. I knew, what her wounds were and what she needed to feel safe and comfortable. And then when you evolve out of that and you shift and change and grow, there's a mourning that comes with that. So that same thing is true in healthy boundaries. When you create this space and now you have this, there's an awareness of an unknown, there's an awareness of a space. Fill the space. Yes, maybe. I mean, eventually it will evolve into what it's going to be. I think sometimes just being in that space to observe it is important. But yes, there's a gap there. And that gap will teach you things. And what you want to fill it with, right? How you want to engage and interact with each other will help you shift into what the next evolution of this relationship or of these relationships, whatever that is. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
is that what you were meaning by filling the space?
So yeah, I mean, I mean it in a very tangible sense. Like, find something you want to do with that person. Like, maybe play games with them, or talk about movies, or have something to talk about or do with them that will add positive to the relationship instead of just taking negative away.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it's hard to come up with those things because you don't know which things might be safe because you've never tried them.
Right.
And that is a way to explore. It's a thing to explore.
It feels like you're meeting someone new, almost like meeting someone for the first time and figuring out how you're going to hang out together or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. Because, like, to me, like, even in a situation where I don't have a history of, like, being stepped on by this person, if I am meeting someone, if I met someone recently and I start spending time with them, how we spend that time, like, if we haven't yet figured out, like, habits and, like, the things that we do together when we are together.
Yeah, things you enjoy together and that actually bring you both joy.
Right.
Yeah.
Whether it's a conversation topic or an activity or whatever. If we haven't figured those out yet, it's a very anxious time for me. It's a very, that is one of the biggest sources of anxiety for me, period, is how do I spend time with people? And because it's hard, because we're all so different in terms of like at least, like, I struggle to find people who I can really be comfortable around, and because of that anxiety there towards the beginning of a relationship.
Where do you think that comes from at the beginning? We're shifting a little bit, but not really. Where do you think it comes from at the beginning of a relationship? Like, do you think it's because you care a lot about what they think, or do you think it's because you maybe are still exploring, like, what brings you joy, or how you want to show up in the world, or I don't know. They're questions. I'm just curious if you know. Maybe you don't know either.
Well, yeah, I think for me it's because a relationship costs a lot. Like, I see things in terms of costs in this sense. Like, a relationship costs a lot of social energy and time, and to me those things are really, really valuable and scarce. I don't know which way. I'll edit in the right one.
Yeah, scarce. I got you. I heard you.
And like, I don't want to waste either of our time or social energy, and like, there's so much, like, there are so many people out there and so many things to do that are valuable and wonderful, and, like, I think that's where it stems from for me, is seeing, like, if we're not enjoying it or getting them something out of it, then it's like, it's a waste, it feels like, or at least there's a cost to it. It never is an interaction that I have with someone worthless. That's not what I mean to imply at all, but I see it in terms of how could, what are the alternatives?
How else could you be spending
your
time?
How else could I be spending my time or my social energy or just energy in general? And like, for example, I'm not someone who generally enjoys, like, just, like, watching TV with someone else. Like, sometimes that's actually really nice, like in times when I need to recharge and, like, they're around or whatever, like, that can be nice, but that's not how I want to spend the majority of my time with anyone. Yeah. So that's just one example, because to me it feels like a waste of time. Like,
because you're not actually engaging.
Because I'm right, and not that every moment of my life or every moment of my interactions with someone has to be engaging and energy draining. Like that doesn't have to be it at all. But I prefer doing other things with people. And
it almost sounds like that is, like, you already have that boundary, but it's just how you show up in the world. It hasn't been a boundary that takes a lot of effort for you. It's more the effort for you is in choosing where to engage. And then when you do choose to engage, that's a harder thing for you because your boundary is so, like, it sounds to me like you're really conscientious of how and where and with whom you spend your time. I don't know if I did any of that grammatically correct, but I don't care.
Yeah.
But it feels like, and I'm going to say it this way, and I don't necessarily mean it this way, but, like, you're really guarded and protected of those resources for you.
Yes.
And because you are, that's how your boundaries show up. And it's like, as you were speaking, I was thinking, oh, that's an interesting, like, I feel like I'm the flip of that. I feel like when I'm engaging with people, I'm always in observation mode, exploration. I want to see how they feel, how I feel, if it's a match, if it's not a match, you know, like, and then there's always a learning experience for me. And I enjoy like the other perspectives of how people show up. And I find that fascinating and I learn a lot from it. And I find that to be a great way for me to learn how to not only, you know, grow myself, but also learn how to help others, because I'm seeing a bunch of different ways of how people show up in the world. But then my problem is sometimes I like open doors way too wide, way too quick. And then I'm in this, you know, time commitment that it was like, oh, but I actually didn't have time for that time commitment.
Right.
Now what? How do I create that space?
One thing that I loved that Dan said in a previous episode was like, you know, it was in talking about like building new relationships with people, and he's like, I don't have enough time to be a good friend to the friends I do have.
That's one of my favorite things.
One of my favorite things I heard. I was like, yes, like that's so true.
Because
like,
being a good friend is important to you.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and it's important to me too.
Right. Like, and
sometimes it's like when he said that, I was like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
I'm a terrible friend to a lot of people.
Right.
And then I was like, wait, hang on, that's not what this is. No.
But like to me, like if I choose to spend time with someone, I really, really care about that person.
Yeah.
And they really mean a lot to me. And that, like, that's why spending quality time is my number one love language. Like,
yeah.
Like that is, it is important to me to be the best friend that I can, and also just to have the best friends that I can.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a beautiful thing. And I love that.
We went sort of off topic.
We did go off tangent. I was just going to circle it back.
Yeah.
But all of these things I think are important observations within setting healthy boundaries, and within we were really talking about where the anxiety comes from. And I think, that anxiety can be in any situation, not just when you set a healthy boundary, but specific to the question, specific to the question that was asked. I feel like, the things that we touched on before, where is your level of self-trust? How are you going into the situations where you're going to be with these people? Are you fully charged? Have you been, do you mindfully take care of yourself? Do you mindfully amplify how you take care of yourself before you go with them? Do you prepare yourself mentally? And it sounds exhausting. Like, maybe do you really want to do this? But it doesn't have to be that way. This is a learning process of setting the boundary and understanding what this new relationship is going to look like. I suspect this is like a longer, relationship that there's been some consistency with. And then all of a sudden when we set the healthy boundary, because they mentioned old patterns, it's like when you set the boundary, then suddenly those old patterns that you've shifted out of, there's a tendency to get sucked back into that. Mm-hmm. And there's also all the players in the situation, all the people there are in the unknown. You have the most clarity because you're the one setting the boundary. I would imagine that's the way it would feel. Because the people, even if you set the boundary with clarity, they're going to be like, wait, this isn't how it's always been.
The most clarity about what? Most
clarity about what this looks like, or what is the purpose of it.
Of moving forward, of what the relationship is going to look like moving forward
with this new boundary in place.
With a new boundary.
Yeah, because within you, this is my hell yes, this is my hell no, and there's not a lot of wiggle room in between there when you're setting a healthy boundary. It's clear, it's concise, it's pretty, this is it. Mm-hmm. And it's not a demand. It's about what you will and won't accept. I won't accept that thing from you. I won't accept speaking politics, just to keep it simple, right? Mm-hmm. I won't accept speaking about this thing with you. That is a hard line. Feel assaulted. We are not going there anymore. If you bring that up, I'm leaving. Right? That's I know I have control over that because it's about me. It's not about them. I don't know if that makes sense. It just feels like it's way more clear for the boundary setter than it is for the people receiving it, simply because they're not used to you setting boundaries. If this is an old pattern with a lifelong thing, you're the one that is, you teach people how to treat you. And you're teaching them a new way to treat you. And so it just feels like,
Yeah.
and I don't know if any of these perspectives are helpful to this person. Hopefully they are. And to everyone, anybody who struggles with setting boundaries, because I think that is a ridiculously common and normal response to setting a healthy boundary with like, I don't know. I knew the reason I needed to set the boundary. That was comfortable for me, even though it was uncomfortable for me. Because I knew what was going to happen. But in the new one, where there's all this space of this unknown, and there's this, it's actually more control. It just doesn't feel that way. But it's because you're controlling the thing that you can actually control, which is you. You get to decide, am I going to engage with these people anymore? How much time am I going to spend? Do I have an escape plan? I mean, that's legit. Like, do I have my car with me so I can leave if I need to, right? Yeah. Do I have my phone with me so I can call an Uber if I need to, right? Like, whatever it is. But just all of those pieces, just really going in prepared and ready to stand up for yourself, whatever that looks like, you know? I think it's important. But any transformation in personal development is a shift, and there's work involved, and it is unknown. And there, I really like what you said about that there's a loss. That is truth. Anytime we make any kind of shift or evolution and we're making changes, there's a loss of something. And that loss is creating space for something new to come in. I truly believe that. That has been over and over and over true in my life and in my journey of transformation. It's like something falls off, and it's like deeply, it's so much mourning that goes in with it. But then what comes in after I create that space and tend to those wounds is way more beautiful than I ever could have imagined. And simply because I was willing to say yes to myself and be firm in my boundaries. What do you think?
I think that's a show.
That's a wrap?
Yes.
All right. Anything else you want to add? Any final thoughts?
No.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. This was a fun conversation. I really enjoyed your input. I loved what you contributed, as always. It's great to have you back. Yay! And we have a new social media page, Hypothetically Intentional, on Facebook and on Instagram. And you can still find us. There isn't a website. The website is drydwellness.com. And you can still find me, Michelle Albers, on social media as well. So we were happy you were here today, and we look forward to speaking again next week. Send us any information that you have, any questions, anything you want us to talk about on the show. We're willing to do it. Andrew's back for a little while. You back for a little while? We'll have some more episodes?
Yes.
Awesome. So we can talk about all things. Well, maybe not all things.
Everything. Every single thing. We'll go through the dictionary one word at a time. We'll talk about each one.
Oh dear, no, please send us some stuff to talk about.
If you don't send us any questions, that's what we're doing. So
all right. Bye. Be you every day.
Bye.